Russia's invasion of Ukraine has led to bipartisanship on several fronts right here in the United States. Most lawmakers agree we should be doing more to help Ukraine, and according to recent polling, so do most Americans. That unity is part of the reason the U.S. has been able to pass billions of dollars in aid to Ukraine as it seeks to save Ukraine's democracy. But a new MSNBC op-ed asks why we don't see the same bipartisanship when it comes to addressing the threats to our own democracy right here at home. Matthew Dowd, former chief strategist for the 2004 Bush-Cheney campaign, writes what former President Donald Trump, various GOP senators and representatives, and Ginny Thomas, the wife of Justice Clarence Thomas, have done and continue to do is the gravest threat to our Constitution in 150 years. If we cannot unify around the truth and see past our divisions, then our democracy is in danger of dying by suicide. Joining me now is Matthew Dowd. He's an MSNBC analyst, political analyst. And Matthew, thank you so much for being here. It's so great to have you, and it's such an important op-ed and conversation.
Thank you, Zerlina. Great to be with you, and great show you have.
Thank you. So I want to start off actually with a quote from your op-ed. It's a really important point. Lay out the threat as you see. I started off with a quote. So lay out the threat as you see it to American democracy and how voters should really process what's going on here.
Well, this is a unique situation where whenever there's been a threat to our democracy or a threat to a democracy in the world, when we have existed as a world power, the country has united as a whole to confront the threat. And we don't see that in this instance at all. The Republican Party seems rock solid in support of what happened on January 6th. They seem rock solid in undermining voting rights. They seem very much in line on any effort to diminish our democracy. And that is incredibly concerning, because if we can't unite around that, and because in large part because a big lie has been allowed to spread, then we really have difficulty describing ourselves as a healthy governing democracy in the world. And we have a higher degree of difficulty leading in the world as a democracy. And so I think that's the stakes. The stakes are incredibly high, as I laid out and as you read at the beginning of this. We had not only a president of the United States and U.S. senators and representatives, we also had the wife of a Supreme Court justice actively involved in enabling and facilitating an insurrection at the Capitol. We've never seen that in our history.
I mean, you mentioned the Ginny Thomas story, which I think actually, having processed it, I was off a few days last week, for a few days removed from just the everyday news cycle, it got bigger in my mind. I mean, do you think Americans really grasp what happened in the last election and realize that 2022 could be the last real democratic election we have in this country if we don't try to figure out how to make the Congress, the GOP members in Congress, at least believe in democracy or act like it?
Well, the bigger concern to me is that you have, obviously we have some awful leaders in Congress who don't seem to want to stand up for our democracy and the Constitution. That, granted, that's a fact. The bigger concern to me is the vast majority of Republican voters seem aligned with that. And that, I think, is the larger concern, is the segment you led in here talking about Russia's attack on Ukraine. Part of the problem that we have is that there's a communication channel in Russia that doesn't allow Russians to know the truth. And so many of them think this is justified, think that attacking Ukraine is defensible, don't have any understanding of the war crimes or the atrocities. And we have that same problem here in a smaller scale. Because there's an information channel that goes to a group of voters in this country that they have really no idea about what reality is. And I think that's the thing we have to overcome. Yes, we can kick out certain people in office, but if we have 30% or a third of the country and 80% of one of the political parties occupied with believing conspiracy theories, believing the big lie, not even supporting the elements of our democracy, that is incredibly concerning. And that's the first time we've had that, where one of our political parties, we've had crazy people, we've had parts of this country that were racist and sexist, and we still do, but we've never had one political party completely occupied by that. And that's the difficulty we're in when you have polarized electorate and you have gerrymandering. Once you add all those into it, we're then led to this situation where I fundamentally believe our democracy is in peril.
So what's the solution here? Because as you mentioned, it extends beyond electoral politics. So what does that look like? Is that private institutions, cultural leaders, you know, even entertainers, anybody who has any influence within American society saying this is a crisis in our democracy?
Well, I think the first part of it is that we all who believe in democracy and want to fight for it have to understand that the fight is never over. The fight wasn't over in 1865. It continued on for 100 years. The fight wasn't over when women got the right to vote. The fight wasn't over when the end of civil rights. The fight has never been over. Every time we think, okay, we've now arrived at a universal suffrage and a democracy where everybody has equal justice and equal rights, we're not there. And so we have to, one, acknowledge that the fight is always going to continue. But I think fundamentally, it's not going to be reached. These people are not going to be reached through political ends by and large. Obviously, elections matter, but they're going to be reached through businesses, through community groups, through all of that speaking truth, saying, hey, you know, if you care about Medicare, if you care about Social Security, if you care about roads, if you care about jobs, if you care about anything, democracy is what preserves those things. So just abandoning democracy to get one specific thing that you want means that you're going to lose all of these other things. And we are completely interconnected. Democracy and the world are interconnected. What happens in Ukraine, what happens here, what happens in Poland, what happens in Hungary is all interconnected. One democracy doesn't just stop existing and one democracy doesn't fail. They all begin to fall as people then pursue an autocratic regime. And that's what we're seeing unfold. And if it happens in the United States, we think Ukraine is bad, which is god awful. If it happens in the United States, the gravity of what that has in the globe is, I don't think you can calculate.
I've been thinking a lot about that as well. And Matthew, I just want to say thank you for joining us today. I've been trying to get you on for many months because I wanted to have this exact conversation. And I hope that you'll take time to join us in the future because I want to continue having this conversation through the midterm elections. It's really, really important to sort of lay out the stakes for what a lot of folks are saying is really the last real election. And I think that we have to wrap our minds around what's happening before it's too late. So Matthew, thank you so much for helping us understand all of this. It's such an important conversation. Please stay safe. Hi, I'm Zerlina Maxwell. Thanks for checking out our channel on YouTube. You can see more from Zerlina by clicking any of the videos on this screen and make sure you subscribe below to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. Thanks for watching.